Hi guys, I'm Adam Nicholas from WhatCulture Football.
And I'm Andrew Pollard from WhatCulture Football.
And we are here to bring you your preview for all of the exciting cup finals that we have coming up this weekend. Of course, the UEFA Europa League final and the UEFA Champions League final. First things first, Andrew Pollard, just give me a quick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited you are for the football this weekend.
Ooh, I was going to say an 11, but it's not quite the national. I'll go with 10. They're two really mouth-watering ties with four really good teams who like to attack. So it's going to be a fun weekend.
It's going to be a fun weekend. I'll give it my highest rating, 9.5. I think it is, because I like to leave a half for just in case something else really outstanding happens. 9.5, I think, to say. Very exciting stuff this weekend. But before we dive into all of this, if you are indeed a fan of all these kinds of things, then please do follow us and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, WhatCulture Football. You can find us there. Or if you like this stuff as a podcast, you can, of course, find us wherever you get your podcast from. And that is WhatCulture Football as well. But let's begin by talking about the Europa League final between, I've just completely forgot the team names there, Inter Milan and Sevilla, of course. There was obviously a lot of speculation before this. People were flirting with the ideas of what the final could have been, as we had the semi-finals set up, shall we say, and we had the potential of a Man United Inter Milan final. A lot of people were interested in that. We haven't got that. We've got Sevilla, we've got Inter Milan, and I have to be honest, I think this is probably the right tie, and I think this tie promises to be absolutely mouthwatering, given the fact that Sevilla's got such an incredible record and Inter Milan happen to be a force to be reckoned with at the moment. Andrew Pollard, before we go any further, tell me what you're thinking. What are your thoughts here? Who are going to be the key factors for Inter Milan and Sevilla this weekend?
Yeah, I think the one that jumps out instantly if you look at Inter Milan is Romelu Lukaku, because he's their talisman. He's just been absolutely on fire. But you still have Man United fans on Twitter moaning that his first touch isn't that great. Like the dude's got 33 goals at the moment in 50 games, which is the best debut season it's the second best debut season of anybody in Inter Milan's history, second only to Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo. R9, as he's now known by the cool kids.
The only Ronaldo, if you really know, the only Ronaldo.
That the streets remember, I think, is that the phrase that the kids say? Yeah. But the interesting bit there though is that if Romelu Lukaku gets one more goal, then that's equal to Ronaldo's goal turnout of, I think Ronaldo got 34 in 47, whereas Romelu Lukaku is on 33 in 50. So there's that to play with. But interestingly, Ronaldo went and scored in Inter Milan's last UEFA Cup final in that season to make it 3-0 against Lazio. And so it's kind of the writings on the wall. Of course, the UEFA Cup, it now is the Europa League. So you look at Rom, but then you look at I was really impressed in the Man United game with Sevilla down the left, with Reguilon at left back and Ocampos on the left wing, who is supposedly a little bit of a doubt, but should play. And I think with the way that Inter Milan set up with a three at the back and with D'Ambrosio on the right, Ashley Young on the left, I think if Sevilla can get in behind those two wing backs, then they could have some joy. But it's just this. It's a really exciting game, I think, for a neutral.
Absolutely. There's literally so much to enjoy about this. I think Ocampos had such a wonderful game in the quarterfinals, and then in the semis maybe didn't get into it as much as he wanted to. Perhaps we'll be looking to make up for that against Inter Milan. I'm sure it's all going to unfold as it goes on. But you touched on Romelu Lukaku there. I think I have it all laid out how we're going to do this, but I think I want to jump ahead into him. Let's talk about him a little bit more, because this has been a fantastic season for him. He's probably the guy you want to spotlight, I would imagine, in this cup final. The guy who has so much to gain and has already gained so much for such a wonderful season with Inter Milan. I think we can both agree, probably has made the right choice leaving Manchester United to go to Inter Milan.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester United got 80 million euros, I think was the figure. So in that way, it was a good deal for Man United. But you're looking at what Man United might need right now, and you're thinking they could do a big, strong number 9, and they don't look stronger than Romelu Lukaku. He is an absolute powerhouse of a number 9, and he had the initial first few weeks into, you could tell he maybe wasn't quite as fit as he could have been, but I know he didn't really have much of a pre-season because I don't think he trained too much with United once it became clear he was going to be leaving. But then that saga, as so many of these do, dragged on a little bit longer than most would have liked. So by the time he got training, he was a little bit off the step. But as soon as he got going, it's just he's never really looked back. And the partnership he's had up front with Lautaro Martinez as well, it's those two link up so well. And we saw in the semi-final game where for the first half, it was Lautaro who was probably the star of that game, but then still pops up in the second half, gets himself 2 goals, and that's the 5-0 demolition of Shakhtar Donetsk. So it's one of those with Lukaku where people can accuse him of being a flat track bully. That's the term that gets thrown around, but I know it's you just look at the numbers, and the guy is key to this Inter Milan team, and it's an Inter Milan team that only missed out on top spot in Serie A by 1 solitary point to Juventus. You're thinking next season it's going to get even. Well, it can't get even tighter, but yeah, you think you may be starting to worry about your crown maybe slipping, and if obviously whatever Inter do next season, Romelu Lukaku is going to be a key part to that, and also a key part to this Europa League final. Absolutely,
Conte has done some wonderful things over there with Inter Milan. I think he's managed to change that mentality a bit, which has been key. And it's funny because after getting all of those ex-Man United players in, you weren't sure really which ones were going to fit, which ones weren't, or which ones were. And ultimately, he seems to have found the balance, even if that's meant leaving players like Christian Eriksen on the bench this season who've had to try and earn their way into the team. Now, in terms of Inter Milan and Sevilla, I was looking before this, you expect to go back and find all of this rich history between the two clubs. But as I'm sure you've also discovered, Andrew, the first time these two are meeting in European competition, there is no head-to-head for us to base this off. So the bookies must be fretting slightly at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I was surprised with that as well when I looked into it, thinking, what's the overall record? And it's like, no, this is the one and only, the one and only time for now. And that makes it even more intriguing. You've got Inter Milan, who probably are going into this on paper as the favourites, but it is, I think you alluded to it earlier, where Sevilla, their record in this, well, Inter have won it 3 times, Sevilla have won it 5 times. And if you want to go into the stats, in the last 15 seasons, Sevilla's won it 5 times. So that's 1 every 3 years. But then also they've won 3 in the last 6 years. So it's like it's nuts, in fact, including 3 back-to-back at one point. So yeah, in terms of stats and comparisons, they're 2 very different teams with 2 very different styles. And it's one of those where you look at Sevilla's history in this trophy and this competition, and you think, well, they've been there before. They've got a few players that have been around since the last time they won the trophy, which was, I think that was 2016. But then it's just this Inter Milan team, and you look at Antonio Conte, who is a Serie A winner, whether it's winning Serie B with Barry, or I think it was 3 on the bounce he got with Juventus, might even be 4. It was, of course, a Premier League title with Chelsea. The guy knows how to win when it matters, and obviously that's going to be something. On the other side of that, for Sevilla, you got Julen Lopetegui as their manager. Mildly disgraced Spain manager, then mildly disgraced Real Madrid manager, who he's somebody who's never won a trophy, which is mad to think you get the Spain job and then the Real Madrid job, and you've never won a trophy.
Imagine that moment where he felt like he had both of those jobs locked down and it was going really well. And I can imagine those images before unfortunate events popping up. Maybe him just signing the deal to go and do Real Madrid after the Spain job, and it all just going completely sour for him, to say the least. But talking about the two teams, seeing as how they haven't been up against one another, let's take a little look kind of at the form guide, I guess, for this point. We've got Sevilla, the ones I've looked a little bit more into here. We've got, obviously, they both kind of had pretty good seasons by their standards. Obviously, you've mentioned already, Inter Milan finished second, just 1 point behind Juventus this season, and a markedly improved year for them compared to the previous couple that they've had. Sevilla finished 4th, 17 points behind Madrid, but they were level on points, of course, with Atletico, who finished 3rd that season. So not exactly a million miles away from that top 3 spot either. But on top of that, Sevilla, in terms of the victories, you've mentioned it already, the most victories they have in this competition across the board, 5, just seems to sort of shape them as the favourites for this one to me, just purely because, but then it should shape them as the favourites, because you'd think this is their trophy. I remember for a little while it felt like Atletico Madrid were doing something similar. It was their trophy, and then they just seem to have a hold on it. But it seems like this year for me, Inter Milan probably have the stronger side, but we all thought that about when Manchester United played Sevilla, and look what happened. So they can't be ruled out by any questionable means whatsoever. And on top of that, Sevilla being only the one of 2 teams to have ever actually retained the title as well. Of course, Real Madrid are the other one, Sevilla, and have done it twice, I believe. Obviously, they did it 3 in a row and 2 in a row, as you mentioned, but Madrid also on that list. These are, in this competition, they cannot be ruled out at all. But then Inter Milan, of course, as I'm sure you can probably back up, have quite a decent season themselves going into this one.
Yeah, it's that, like you said there, the key point I think is how markedly improved Inter Milan have been this season under Conte. And because it's a Serie A that's been dominated by Juventus for, I guess, a decade now, pretty much. Where even if you win the title, it doesn't really mean anything, as Maurizio Sarri found out when he won Serie A and then got
Yeah.
fired. Yeah, that Sevilla team, they're a good team because they went through Roma before they went through Wolves, before they went through Manchester United. That's an impressive list of teams there. Historically, two big clubs in Man United and in Roma, and then Wolves, who are kind of one of everyone's like second or third favorite teams right now. But yeah, they had that disappointment of being knocked out of the Champions League because they were in a group with Barcelona and Borussia Dortmund, and it's like only two would go through, and something had to give, and it was Inter Milan. And I remember there were calls at the time where maybe Conte was going to get the boot already at that. He's recently come out and said that was, I can't remember the exact phrase of it, but basically that was one of the best things that could have happened to them in terms of European football, because it being Conte, he always plays down things, and he was saying like, "Oh, we've got this relatively young, inexperienced squad, so it's a good experience for them to go further in Europe in the Europa League rather than over in the Champions League." Sorry about that, but this Inter team, you look at it and it's full of the fact that Milan Skriniar can't get into the team at the moment, a centre half. He's touted as one of the best centre halves in world football. He's been linked with everybody, Ahuso and Man United, Man City, Real Madrid, touted around 80 million. And they're playing three centre-backs, this Inter Milan system, like Conte's done at Juventus and at Chelsea. And Skriniar can't get in that team. But you've got Diego Godin, you've got Stefan de Vrij, who's always a massive favourite of mine. But even in front of that, in the three there will be Brozovic, and it'd be Barella. I'm not too sure who's going to play with them in there. But I think for me, there's so many intriguing battles all over the place, because you look at how Sevilla can win this game. I've talked about down the left side, how they had that luck against Man United down there. But so key to that is kind of playing off the left central midfield almost is Ever Banega. And it's like, what a football. Just so, you almost feel like he's underrated a little bit, but it feels silly because people do rate him. He's just so good. And I think that Inter Milan team, how they can cope with Banega, I think, as well, is going to be a big battle. But then you look at there's Bono, as he was going around on Twitter, the keeper.
Yeah,
he's going to have to have a big game. He had the game of his life against Manchester United, and he's going to have to do something similar to hold off Martinez and Lukaku.
He certainly is. I love that strike partnership with those two, by the way. The big man, the little man, always works for me. And it seems like, even though it feels like a very English concept, that it worked perfectly for them over in Italy. But I'm going to put you on the spot, Andrew, just before we jump into the Champions League preview. Who's going to win it? Who is going to have their name put on the trophy at the end of Saturday's match?
I
promise you, I'll give my opinion too. I won't just put you on the spot.
I think I do have to go for Inter Milan. And for me, I think the main driving factor is because it's Antonio Conte. I just think he'll know what to do to get the job done. And I don't think Sevilla are going to have Diego Carlos is great at the back, centre half. But I don't think they can have enough at the back to cope with Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez. And maybe they contain one of them, but that's the thing. There's two of them, and it's not often these days that teams really play with a strike partnership per se. And so, yeah, I can't see Inter Milan not scoring more than Sevilla. Is my way around of saying, Inter are going to win.
Brilliant. Well, I would like to disagree with it, but I don't think I can, unfortunately. I think Inter Milan are indeed going to come away with it. Now, having been the man who's edited most of these videos when Adam Wilborn has indeed been here, I realise that probably means Sevilla are going to win at this match. However, I don't want to hedge our bets. Let's double down on Inter Milan. I feel confident they are going to get the win. I look forward to someone rehashing this footage later to tell us how wrong we were. But that's our predictions and our little breakdown of the UEFA Europa League. Let's move into the Champions League final, shall we? This one, well, if the first one was delicious, I mean, this is an even better dessert. I don't know how I would describe this, because these are two of the biggest teams in Europe right now who are playing some of the best football in Europe. I think we can all agree, with some of the biggest stars in Europe. Do I need to go on? I keep saying Europe. The world probably covers it even better, truth be told. But let's talk about Bayern Munich versus Paris Saint-Germain, of course. A final that I think a lot of people probably wanted initially, weren't maybe sure we were going to get. There was a few underdogs on the way in the quarterfinals and semi-finals who we would probably have liked to see from a purist perspective, maybe. But I do believe this is the final we probably deserve at this point. Do you think?
Yeah, yeah. It was the one where when you looked at the draw once the Champions League restarted and you kind of planned ahead, you thought this is probably the most likeliest. Apart from Manchester City, maybe were in the contention, but obviously that went wrong against Leon. Um, yeah, on the other side of things, you always fancy Paris Saint-Germain. I was pleading for Atalanta, but it wasn't to
Weren't
be.
we
And
all? Weren't we all?
exactly, but Paris Saint-Germain, they got through by hook or by crook there, and then they steamrolled past RB Leipzig like it was nothing. Didn't even break a sweat. And obviously Bayern Munich haven't really broke a sweat and just have been scoring a ridiculous amount of goals. But it's the final. I think most people wanted, unless you've got any sort of allegiance to any other teams in the
Yeah.
competition. It was the final most people expected, and it's the final that offers, I think, the highest chance of just a bucket load of goals,
Mm.
which means it's probably going to be a stuffy 1-0 off someone's half.
Or just 0-0 all the way through until penalties.
Yeah, yeah.
I think looking at both sides and having watched them throughout the restart, you can see incredible attacks from both teams. Slightly more open defences is probably the nicest way I can put it. That this Bayern Munich side are fascinating to watch because they are so clinical and yet they give the opposition plenty of opportunities. You watched that match against Leon the other night, and they had more than enough chances to possibly take the lead and maybe even been two ahead before Bayern got anywhere near to scoring against them. So, and you saw this a very similar pattern against Barcelona, and that ended up being 8-2 to Bayern Munich. So they really are a hard team to read. If we can find a team who can break through and find a way to actually put those chances away, then maybe, just maybe, that's the team to beat them. The question is, who potentially could be the ones to cause trouble for either side? Let's start with Paris Saint-Germain first. If they're going to get through that Bayern Munich line, who indeed could be the ones to do it?
It kind of it tells its own story. Neymar, Mbappe, Di Maria. I think Mbappe's the one. I know he's not scored since the restart.
Yeah,
Um,
wild.
but yeah, he's the one that I fancy more. We've seen Neymar go through and have proper gilt-edged chances where it's looked like he's barely seen a football before, but then he'll go 10 minutes later and beat six players and set up 2 goals in the last minute
Yeah.
or whatever. It was insane that the Atalanta game. But I think Mbappe's the serious threat there for me. And what I kind of admire about this Bayern Munich team is they're not really shy about their frailties. That they just have that kind of the old age classic school mentality of like, oh, we're just going to score more than you. It's all right.
I think you'll find that's the Newcastle entertainers mentality of chuck your defence in the sink and just go forward and hope you can score more goals than the other team. I won't quite compare that Newcastle team to this Bayern Munich team, but you know what I mean.
Inspired by Keegan, clearly. It's like, yeah, well, we've got Darren Peacock in defence, but it's all right because we're going to get David Ginola
It's totally
and
fine.
Dino Spreer and
Well,
Les Ferdinand.
it worked out great for us, didn't it? So
It did. Well, for a spell, entertaining, and then yeah, maybe not so. But yeah, it's very much like that. I love the approach to it with Bayern Munich, and Bayern Munich are one of those teams where I don't know people. Nobody really gives them that credit, or they get credit, but like begrudgingly, because it's like, oh, it's Bayern, of course they're going to win, and they've not always been the most exciting of teams to watch. They've maybe relied on for the longest time on Robin and Ribéry to do wonders and bits of magic, but everybody else was just a bit. They're just there to be the pieces to facilitate for the one or two players to do something, pull a rabbit out of the hat. But this team now, you watch it and it's like all over the pitch. It's fun to watch Bayern Munich, which normally when people look at the Bundesliga, everybody has that soft spot for Borussia Dortmund because they play football the right way. And this Bayern Munich team, they play the right way. They're all really good footballers from the front to the back. It's an insane squad they've got there.
well, this feels like as good a time as any because we're talking about Bayern Munich. I feel like you're leaning into this incredible statistic you happen to pull up about this Bayern Munich team. Now, before anyone starts complaining, yes, of course, money will be a factor for most teams, but I think it's fair to say this Bayern Munich team have perhaps slightly tried to change the narrative there, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at Paris Saint-Germain and what was it, 200 million euros for
Yeah,
Neymar, whatever it was
just for Neymar.
yeah, just for Neymar, and then
Yeah,
Mbappe with 100 odd with that weird deal they had where it's kind of on loan because of FFP, but then you come in the next season
yeah.
anyway. But on the flip side of the Bayern team, the starting 11 in the semi-final against Leon in euros cost a combined 95 million euros, which I love the comparison of this when I saw the stat is the comparison is Kepa at Chelsea cost 80 million euros on his own.
Unbelievable.
Got replaced at the end of the season by free transfer Willy Caballero. And you've got this, yeah, you've got this Bayern team collected. That starting 11 was 95 million euros. 30 million euros of that was on Manuel Neuer. 25 million euros on Thiago Alcantara. 13 million euros to bring Jerome Boateng back to Germany. 10 million for Alphonso Davies. Looked like a steal. Yeah,
steal.
Yeah, 8.5 million for Joshua Kimmich, who seems like he's been at Bayern forever, but he came through from RB Leipzig. And 8 million for Serge Gnabry. Then the rest of the teams is I know. You look at these numbers, and you're thinking,
the man who scored 2 of the 3 goals in the semi-final and just couldn't. It's funny because I saw René Adelaide and him and talking at the end of the match. Obviously, René Adelaide playing for Lyon and Gnabry for Bayern. 2 players who were both on the books at Arsenal who have now left and gone elsewhere and find themselves in a Champions League semi-final. It's just baffling that they had this talent, and it's just 8 million euros he went for. That's crazy when you consider what he's been given back to Bayern Munich.
Yeah, it's nuts. He is without a doubt one of the most exciting young footballers on the planet, and he seems to have kind of this consistency beyond his years. Where I think he's still 22, and you've got with players of that sort of age, that there is consistency is the big problem. You can see the talent, but they're very hit and miss. And with Serge Gnabry, he already seems to have that consistency to his game, and he can do pretty much anything. Normally, it's on his right foot. Then we saw the belter he scored with his left foot, that first goal in the semi-final, which felt so harsh for Leon. I think it was a hit post, and then straight away. Yeah,
I've seen it so many times, man.
Yeah, it seems to be a big trait of this Champions League restart as well, or European football restart. I think 3 or 4 games have had similar situations, but yeah, Gnabry's he's going to be at Bayern probably for the rest of his career. You'd imagine one of those. You can just see him being a part of that squad for the next 10 years. And as long as he wants to stay there, they're obviously going to keep him. And the scary thing is, he's only going to get better and better and better.
I know. You think about how good this team and these players are, and there's so many of them who are just so young still, and you just think this is the sign of a club who's done it right. Whereas you look at what's been going on with Barcelona at the moment, it feels like the policies maybe have been so far separate. We are now seeing the benefits of Bayern Munich. But let's just quickly dive in, because I'll try and rattle these off so we can just talk about the glowing records of these 2 teams heading into this. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Paris Saint-Germain finished 12 points clear, obviously, before the league was abandoned over in France, and they were then crowned champions. It was their 7th league title in the past 8 years for that one. They've also won the treble this season, so obviously the league, the Coupe de la Ligue, and also the Coupe de France. Then you go to Bayern Munich, and it's just more of the same from them. They've finished 13 points clear of Borussia Dortmund at the top of the Bundesliga this year. That's 8 titles in a row for them. And then on top of that, their current form is 28 wins and 1 draw in all competitions. And you look at, they also won the double this year in terms of getting the Bundesliga and the DFB Pokal and coming runners-up in the Super Cup. I mean, between the 2 teams, that's like, I think, as long as I've been alive, that's probably the entire quality of runs of like wins for Newcastle that I would ever see in my lifetime. They've managed to achieve it in like 2 seasons between them. Madness, absolute madness.
Yeah, it's insane. That Paris Saint-Germain stat of 7 and 8 league titles is ridiculous. And just coincidentally, it was the year before the 8 was when they got the massive investment from QSI. Not saying money buys things, but
no, of course not.
It doesn't help. And Bayern Munich, they've just the way they've gone about the approach to just their signings has been really, I don't know, it's frustrating in one way if you're not Bayern Munich, but it's so smart, so sensible, picking up players on free transfers because they're Bayern Munich. So it was when Dortmund were competing, and it's like, well, Mario Götze, do you want to come and play for Bayern? Your contract's up, rather than us paying a fee to Dortmund. Lewandowski, it's smart. You'd be gutted if you're Dortmund or anybody else in Germany who wants to try and compete. But the same happened with Lewandowski. They lured him over on a free transfer. Leon Goretzka, who looks like a real player. I've been so impressed with him. I think he goes a little bit under the radar. I think since the restart, when I've been watching him, just driving him in midfield and doing the dirty work, and he's so big these days as well. A powerhouse.
Such a physical presence, and it was just notable. He was just box to box to box and just breaking stuff up, making play happen. He had everything in his arsenal, and I think you'll just see like how many of the pundits were absolutely blown away by how good he was. He's covered every blade of grass. Sorry, easy for me to say, and still didn't look like he'd barely broken a sweat at the end of the match. This is a guy who's running the show for Bayern, and then that's just one of 11 players who could completely destroy you any which way. Terrifying stuff. But before we dive away, let's quickly look at the head-to-heads. We do have some history between these two, thankfully, that we can touch on. We have between Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich. It turns out that actually Paris Saint-Germain are the ones with the advantage. They've won 5 of the 8 games that the two teams have played. 3 losses for Bayern Munich. No draws, so get ready for that 0-0 all the way to penalties, Andrew. That one is certainly on the cards. And interestingly, though, this will be Paris Saint-Germain's first Champions League final, and it's Bayern Munich's. They've had 10 finals at this point, and they've won 5 of them. It doesn't hardly seem fair, does it?
No, it's insane that I'm glad you pulled up the 5 times stat there, because they are just this traditional European powerhouse. Yeah. You think of the great European sides, you think of Bayern Munich, you think of Real Madrid, Manchester United, Liverpool. I guess people of a certain vintage, and now again Liverpool. But yeah. Paris Saint-Germain aren't that traditional big team. Paris Saint-Germain are a side that only formed in 1970 just because some businessmen thought Paris would be a really cool place for football. And
they were well.
Yeah, and then when they got that investment in 2011-12, that's just they've forced themselves into the picture of being this European powerhouse. They dabbled with the semi-finals in, I think it was 94-95. With David Ginola was there before he made that big move. And Patrice Loco, who I used to love, just purely because it's a sensible world of soccer. But yeah,
of course, yeah.
Too right. But yeah, I just it's always good to see something fresh, and to see Paris Saint-Germain in the final for the first time, European Cup final, Champions League first time, is good. But then you're always going to get that argument of like, yeah, but look at the money they've thrown in. This isn't really earned. But
yeah, unfair. That's a fair point, truth be told.
Yeah. But I think I'm just intrigued to see which defense kind of creaks first, really, because you'd like to think. I know we keep saying it, and we probably are jinxing it, but you'd like to think there's be lots of goals, just because both teams can be got at, and also because both attacks are so potent and so quick. It shapes up to be brilliant, and it's just like tonight, Friday night, like Europa League, and then to tune in then over the weekend for the Champions League final. It's a good few days of football.
Absolutely, very exciting stuff indeed. But it's coming at that time. I'm going to have to ask you, Andrew, who's winning? Who is coming away with the big W for the? Is it going to be a first time for Paris Saint-Germain, or is it going to be just another one in the books for Bayern Munich?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what would happen if Paris Saint-Germain won it. As in, what's the end game for QSI and their plans for Paris Saint-Germain? I mean, what happens then? Because it doesn't necessarily. I mean, the Liga and the French league isn't going to get more competitive all of a sudden just because Paris Saint-Germain win that big trophy. But I think I have to stick with who I've gone with since the beginning. Since restart happened, I've backed Bayern Munich on this all the way, and I think it would be a little bit scummy to then go all of a sudden, no, Neymar.
Hey, I admire the allegiance. There's lots of people here who would probably have flip-flopped at some point, so it'd be very hard to argue. Bayern Munich are a fantastic side, but I am a dreamer. I'm a dreamer, and I love a good narrative, so I am going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to say I think we might be in for a surprise, and I think it might be Paris Saint-Germain. As much as I do think I would be happy for either side to win, let's be honest, they've played some incredible football and have entertained me to no end since this has restarted. But I think, for me, I'm going to go with PSG. I'd like to see them be the ones who come away in the end. And I know money does talk, and I know it's not the one to pluck for. But at the end of the day, I want to see some change in my football, and everything points towards Paris Saint-Germain and finally getting that big win in the Champions League. And imagine if they just decided to pull all the money after that. Wouldn't that be hilarious? Anyway, that's our preview for the 2 finals that are coming up this weekend. We hope you have enjoyed it. Let us know your thoughts, who's going to win, how wrong we are about our predictions, and any other interesting stats you might have about these 2 matches in the comments. Let us know all of those. You can follow WhatCulture on Twitter. You can follow us at WhatCulture FC, or you can follow either of your lovely hosts here on Twitter too. You can find me at It's Adam Nicholas, or you can find Andrew Pollard
at Cultured Left Peg.
Totally agree. But that has been your preview for the weekend. We hope you enjoy all of the football. Please do, as always, like, share, and subscribe where you can. WhatCulture Football on both YouTube and on wherever you get your podcasts from. Anyway, enjoy the football this weekend. We'll be watching. I'm sure you will be too. And we will undoubtedly look forward to all of the clips of us being completely wrong. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.